Hello everyone, I'm Alex from bulletpointfitness.com, and in today's video we're going to be talking about training to failure. So what exactly is training to failure? Training to failure means where you cannot complete another repetition of the same movement or exercise with the same form or technique. This is the point where the muscle has reached mechanical failure. It can no longer complete the requirements placed upon it. To which the only follow-up question to this is, should you be using or training to failure? There are two main benefits for training to failure. Number one is the potential stimulus you can create for hypertrophy or for muscle growth. Training to failure is a pretty useful metric for muscle growth because when trying to increase the actual size of the muscle, what you're trying to do is push the muscle to its current capabilities because you want to get it to a state which is beyond what its current capabilities are, because you're trying to make the muscle larger. So that means in the moment or in the exercise that you're doing, you're trying to create that stimulus for growth. You know full on well that when a muscle reaches failure or that point of mechanical failure, you will have created a stimulus for growth, of which the muscle can then repair, recover, and become larger. This is one of the key benefits of training to failure. It's a very useful and also simple metric that everyone can use in their own training. Because if you're doing an exercise and you continue to train that muscle all the way to the point where it can then no longer do any more work in that moment, you've done everything possible in that moment for that muscle to create a stimulus for it to become larger. So you know there and then that you've created that stimulus. From then that point on, you can log the amount of weight was necessary and the amount of reps and the total workload necessary to get to the point where the muscle was no longer able to complete any more work. Then you can document that and improve upon that from session to session. The second main benefit of training to failure is from a time perspective. Now, you could do multiple sets per each exercise, but remember, the minimum amount of sets necessary to stimulate muscle growth and stimulate muscle protein synthesis is 1. So if time is a main limiting factor, you can't complete numerous amounts of sets for the same exercise in a single session. You're going to be strapped for time. So what you can do is, once already warmed up, do one working set per exercise, taking that to failure, and then that means you can have short and intense training sessions and create the necessary stimulus for muscle growth. You can achieve a lot of work in a shorter period of time. Obviously, this means the intensity and intensiveness of your workouts has to be high. So rather than spending hours and hours in the gym, you can reduce the amount of time you spend in the gym by focusing on getting a high stimulus on that muscle by training it to failure, because you don't then need to do a lot of consequent sets after that. However, there are a few factors to think about when training to failure to make sure that you're doing it effectively and safely. So the first one is to think about is you want to pick low skill based movements. So these are more machine and cable based exercises where the form and technique is far more locked in, rather than a highly skilled movement which requires a high level of balance, coordination, and technique to be proficient in. Especially if there are a lot of component moving parts to the exercise, there is a risk that other parts of the movement start and your form starts to diminish. So for example, if we use the deadlift as a main example, where you want to keep your back neutral and flat, if you start taking these exercises to a high level or close proximity to failure, the likelihood that your spine will start to move and you'll start to generate force in inefficient patterns just to be able to get more reps and more work. The problem with this is this leads to a higher risk of injury. Moreover, when training these movements to a high degree of failure and then the technique and form starts to diminish, in those highly fatigued states, your body will start to learn those movement patterns rather than the correct movement patterns. So one of the key things to understand with training to failure is that it's only really useful if the goal is muscle growth and muscular development. If the goal is to develop a skill or to develop a movement pattern or to develop strength as a skill, i.e. a back squat or a deadlift or a bench press or any barbell movement, training to failure should not be utilized. And it should be done so very minimally, if ever. Because what you start to do is you start to build the failure itself and those failure movement patterns, i.e. form breakdown, technique breakdown, so forth. You start actually building those into your nervous system and into your memory system, rather than the perfect form that you're trying to practice and improve upon. Now, from a strength perspective, this is important longer term because the reason why you want to move as perfectly as you can, based around your anthropometry, is because you want to move as efficiently as possible. This will mean you can then move more load or more reps, or whatever may be the case. Is training to failure necessary for growth? Well, it's both a yes and no answer. If you are strapped for time, then you want to maximize the most out of your workout sessions so you can create the stimulus for change because you're looking to develop a better and a more improved body composition. So if time is a limiting factor, then I think training to failure is actually a necessity and is essential. If you are slightly more flexible in your time and you can dedicate more time to training, then that means you can focus maybe more on the skill set necessary to maximize muscle growth, which means you could do slightly more sets and leave those training, failure sets towards the end of that particular group of sets. So if you're doing, say, 4 sets for a specific exercise, for the first 3 could be focused on accumulating as much high quality work for that exercise, and then the final set you can take to that failure point. This is a way you can then incorporate more volume into your workout. Remember, the key to long-term growth is consistent effort over the long term. This is not just a single act done once. It's the repeatability of these acts over the long term that's going to yield the highest amount of growth and development of the muscles and your physique. So one of the other things to think about when training to failure is that it can place a higher toll on the central nervous system and on recovery. So make sure that you're fully recovered after each session before then trying that exercise again. Do you think we should be training to failure? Let me know in the comments section below. It'd be great to open up a conversation and dialogue and to hear some of your thoughts. Make sure to like and subscribe and head on over to bulletpointfitness.com for more information.